Year one for Rick Pitino at St. John's. Had a cold streak, was 12-4, 14-12 mid-February, and then boom, they won 6 straight and gave UConn a run for their money in the Big East tournament. And then they get left out of March Madness. The Big East got screwed, and Pitino said, I don't want to waste my time with the NIT. He turned his attention to next year, and boy, does he have a roster, and this team could be really good. Christian and Nick here with Kevin Connelly, who covers St. John's for Storm the Paint. Kevin, tell us just the reception to Pitino after year one, how kind of that was all assessed. I think a lot of great things to take off of that first year, and how high are the expectations this year when you bring in a couple of transfer guards like Kadari Richmond and Davon Smith?
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. Last year, it was crazy how quick Rick Pitino kind of changed the culture of St. John's basketball and brought in this winning mindset, and really something St. John's hadn't had since probably before we were all born, going back to Louis Carnesecca. It's been a while since there were a lot of eyeballs on St. John's like there were last year. And as you would expect, with basically a whole new roster, only bringing one guy back in Joel Soriano, there was a lot of growing pains and a couple of bad early season losses to a team like Michigan, who did not have a good season at all. Same with Boston College. And you look at those two games, and those are big reasons why St. John's didn't make the tournament. Although you get to the end of the year, you win a Big East quarterfinal game. You get to the semifinals of the Big East tournament for the first time since 2000. You give UConn basically all they can handle, and you don't make the NCAA tournament. And St. John's, I think they had one of the highest net rankings and one of the highest KenPom rankings of at-large teams not to make the tournament. So it was a little bit of a surprise. Obviously, the bid stealers in the conference tournaments last year did not help them. But even if there weren't those bid stealers, they probably still would not have made the NCAA tournament. But if you look at Rick Pitino's track record, and obviously it's a great track record, a Hall of Fame track record, he doesn't usually have that great success in the first year at his stops. In fact, the only time he's made the NCAA tournament in his first year at a school is with Iona, and he only did that because he won the conference tournament to earn an automatic bid. So, and the growth from year one to year two results typically in an NCAA tournament bid. So that's the expectation right now for St. John's. And as you mentioned, bringing in two lead guards like Kadari Richmond coming over from Seton Hall and Devon Smith coming over from Utah, they could really combine and be one of the best backcourt tandems in the Big East, along with sophomore guard Simeon Wilger, who's expected to take a big jump as well.
Yeah, my biggest thing with St. John's from year one to year two, besides just building the culture and everything from the ground up, is, last year you're getting guys, and I like these guys, don't get me wrong, Chris Ledlam, Harvard, Jordan Dingle, Penn, two Ivy League players. Now you're going big with high major guys. You're bringing in bigger fish. We talked about Smith, Kadari already a little bit, both elite players. Both a little ball dominant. I know it's going to work. It's with Pitino. I know they'll figure it out. But with having like 2 point guards % on the floor, it's not always a bad thing. But what will they look like side by side to play off each other?
Well, it's going to be really interesting because, as you mentioned, both are ball dominant in their where they've been in the past of their careers. I think right now you probably say Kadari could be that lead point guard just because of his size. And you look at a guy like Devon, who is so quick and can really just fly past defenders. That's how I kind of envision it right now. And as you mentioned, with this 2 point guard system almost, look at probably one of Rick Pitino's best teams ever at Louisville. He had 2 point guards in Russ Smith and Peyton Siva. And he's mentioned that a lot. He even mentioned it last year, although Danis Jenkins was the primary point guard and his guy coming over from Iona with Jordan Dingle. So he's had a lot of success with 2 ball dominant guards on the floor, and he knows how to make it work. And I would expect the same this season.
See my shirt, 2013 Big East tournament.
Yep.
And Russ Smith was a small off guard, but he was basically played the point. And when he's averaging 60 points a game in China, he's playing point. And then Peyton Siva was a fantastic college point guard. And it's a testament. And Nick, you referenced this. Like, it's just a testament to Pitino. Like, we just have all the faith in the world that the fit is going to happen. And yeah, those guys have some egos. Like, they both consider themselves point guards, but it's going to work. I'm very confident. Everyone knows Richmond, like around the Big East and everything, but Smith is a guy. I went to Wake at Georgia Tech. He had these moments where I'm like, who is this dude? Who is this dude? Like, he can play. Like, I love the way he reads the floor. And then at Utah, took him some time. I don't know if it was waiver or injury, but I think it might have been waiver. But when he got there, he hit a stride. He is so good, man. He can fly. He can shoot. He can pass. He can rebound. He can do everything. I'm a huge fan of his game. One other note that I just have to address, you mentioned the Michigan and Boston College thing. Just pisses me off that you lose a game November 13th. It's your first year as a coach, and that matters on Selection Sunday. Like, Michigan was good then. St. John's was still a thing. Like, UConn smoked everyone in the NCAA tournament, including Purdue, and losing by 5 to them, like, does whatever. St. John's gets through last year. Anyway, we're on to this year, and just went over that backcourt. I'm looking at this front court. You bring in a guy like Aaron Scott from North Texas and Uwachukwu from USC. Those are very Pitino athletes and guys in the front court that he likes to have. What have you been hearing about them? They're older too. They're both seniors. So what have you been hearing about those guys?
Well, the coaching staff is in love with Aaron Scott. St. John's played North Texas in the Charleston Classic last year. Utah was actually in it, but Devon didn't play because he was still sitting out because of the transfer waivers, hadn't been all processed yet. So they did play North Texas, and Aaron Scott, he's a big, physically imposing player, really good defender, has an offensive skill, and everything that I've heard from off-season workouts now into the start of official practices, he has been phenomenal, and the coaching staff is really high on him. I'm not sure if he can crack the starting lineup on opening night, but he's certainly going to be a big piece of this team coming off the bench. A lot of people are focused on the transfers. Vince Achukwu, obviously, 7'1", going to provide some pretty good rim protection. Still working his way back. A couple of years ago, he had that cardiac arrest incident at USC. So I do think he's going to play a strong role off the bench. But one of their returners who came on strong last season in Zuby Ejiofor, the transfer from Kansas, he's primed to have a really big year, filling in now with Joel Soriano gone. A little bit undersized as a center, really only 6'9", 6'10". But I think he could be a player that puts up anywhere from 12 to 14 points per game. And if he can pull you down 8 to 9 rebounds, I think that's going to be really solid. And I think he has that in his game. He's continued to work on it. He's trying to develop a little bit of a 3-point shot, which we saw at the end of last season, and continue working on that in the offseason. I think Zuby Ejiofor will probably be your starting center for St. John's on opening night, 1 month from today. And I think he's primed for a really, really big season.
I have 2 questions. First one, RJ Louise, no shin problems this offseason, good to go, fully healthy?
Yeah, so he's fully healthy. Talked to him over the summer, and as soon as the season ended, he underwent surgery on both his shins, and he was kept off the court until about June, and then he was fully cleared to go for full contact and to resume all basketball activities right at the start of off-season workouts in September. So he's ready to go. Rick Pitino, he's tweeted out that he's changed up his shot. He wanted him to almost look at the shooting form of Joel Embiid from 3-point range and see if he can shoot a little bit better, because I think that's the biggest question right now with St. John's is, do they have enough shooting? But right now all systems are a go for RJ Lewis.
And my second question is year 2 bumps for 2 guys I like, Simeon Wiltshire and Brady Dunlap.
Yeah, so Simeon Wiltshire, I think he is going to make another massive jump from freshman to his sophomore campaign. You saw it in spurts as a freshman. Look at that victory at home against Creighton, really as a jumping point for Simeon Wiltshire and what he can do. The biggest thing for him and Brady Dunlap as well was just filling out in their frame. Both are really tall players, but they needed to add a lot of muscle, especially if they wanted to compete in the Big East. And freshmen don't always thrive in Rick Pitino's system. And these are 2 guys who have completely bought in. They're fully committed to what Rick Pitino has in store for them. They know how good of a coach he is, and he can get them to elevate their game and get them to the next level. So I think Simeon Wiltshire is going to be a really big piece of the St. John's backcourt. And Brady Dunlap also had his moments last year, went on that heater at the early part of Big East play against Butler, against Villanova. I think he might have had a big game against Creighton thrown in there as well, or Xavier. It was one of those 2. But same thing. He needed to fill out. He needs to get a little bit stronger. He has a really good shot, and if he can continue to work on that, he could be probably one of the best shooters on this St. John's team. And one thing I will add, Simeon Wiltshire has also worked on his shot a lot in this offseason, and I've heard some rumblings coming out of Queens that so far there were offseason workouts in the regular season fall practice. Wiltshire's been the best shooter.
Wow. Love seeing – it's a huge for St. John's that they were able to retain that young talent. And it wasn't surprising at all. You knew with Pitino coming there and easing in those guys' ears, that he had a plan for them. And I think that's coming to light when you see the young guys bringing back, you got Luis back in the transfers. Like, there's a lot to like. You look at some of Pitino's best teams in Louisville, some staples were They love to force turnovers in press. Obviously, press last year at St. John's, but they were second in 2013 and 2014 in turnover percentage. Offensive rebounding is another thing. Obviously, you lose Joel Soriano, who was the king of that. But in those two areas, do you expect St. John's to be able to get to an elite level, and like through which players will be leading the way in those categories?
Yeah, I really do. And I think you look at Kadari Richmond at the top of that press, and it was something that really aggravated Rick Pitino last season, that early in the season when we talked about some of those losses, that they just weren't able to grasp it. They were getting beat back, and it takes time. It takes time to implement this system into these players. And Rick Pitino said last season, last offseason, they were just trying to get any player they could because they knew they had to fill out the roster, and they recruited all offensive players. So all these guys really wanted to do was play offense, and they had to teach them defense. And it's not easy to pick up a complicated defensive system like Rick Pitino. So I do think this year in the transfer portal, obviously they added a lot of really good talent, but they picked their spots. They knew who they wanted to go after, and they hit a lot of home runs. And you'll get a guy like Kadari Richmond, who's a really good defender as well. So I think he's going to be a focal point at the top of that St. John's press. And then when it gets later in a game, you look at a guy like Vincent Chukwu, who could be that rim protector and that eraser at the rim. So I do think this defense is going to be much improved from last season.
That's the third piece, also the rim protection. They've been Pitino teams 10th last year in block percentage, 3rd at Iona the year before, 8th the year at Iona the year before, and plenty of other top 10 finishes at Louisville as well. Go ahead, Nick.
Just 2 questions. Any freshmen to look out for that could break out this season? And then 2, what is your predicted starting 5?
All right, so freshmen, like I said, they don't really thrive in Rick Pitino's system. They brought 3 in this offseason. 2 of them are international prospects. Ruben Prey, a Portuguese prospect who some scouts that you talk to say he has NBA potential. Now, I don't know if that's going to be this upcoming NBA draft or he's going to need at least 2 years at the college level, but there are scouts that are high on him. The other American prospect, Jaden Glover, New Jersey kid, a super athlete. Throughout his high school year, has really developed his skills on the basketball court. And I'm expecting to see, of the 3 freshmen, the 2 of them probably get a lot of time. And then we all know Rick Pitino's connection with Greece. They also brought in a Greece prospect, Leftertis Laitopoulos. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right.
Is he a lefty?
Yes. Yeah. His nickname, I think he's going to go by Lefty. So that's let's call him Lefty. But he's the other freshman known as a shooter. So we'll see if he's able to get on the court that much as well. Right now, if you ask me who the St. John's starting 5 is, I'd go Richmond and Smith in the backcourt. I'd say Ejiofor will probably be your starting center. I'd put R.J. Lewis at the 3, and then maybe Aaron Scott at the 4. I can see Simeon Wilcher coming off the bench and still playing anywhere between 20 to 25 plus minutes per game. But I think right now that's the 5 you go with because it does give you the size, it gives you the versatility. But then obviously the biggest question mark is shooting.
Speaking of shooting, is RJ who you were talking about with the Joel Embiid thing, or was that somebody else?
It was RJ.
Why Joel Embiid for a 6'6" wing?
That's a very good question. We haven't talked to Rick Pitino about that. That'll certainly be one of the questions that I will ask. I'm sure other people will as well once we talk to him in an official press conference setting. But he tweeted out that RJ Lewis was fully cleared and ready to go, and he told him he tweeted out that he sent him video of Joel Embiid's shooting form over this offseason for him to study and try and emulate. So it's certainly interesting. I kind of scratched my head at it as well when I saw that tweet, but obviously the Hall of Fame head coach would know best, and I'll leave all judgment up to him on that one.
If you remember,
that's why I'm laughing so hard. Like, of course, Pitino.
Well, if you guys remember, there's a quote from Embiid saying, he obviously is the guy that started playing basketball later in his life, and he said he would watch the white guys of the YMCA shoot because they tuck their elbow under. So maybe by way of the YMCA is how Pitino is getting to RJ Lewis, who was pretty brutal as a shooter last year. Like, I think he is a key piece of this. Aaron Scott can shoot it a bit, And
Yeah.
Smith can. Some people think Smith just got really hot at the end of last year and isn't a good shooter. I disagree. I like the way the ball comes out of his fingertips. I think he is a good shooter, and Richmond can make it. And also the thing with, because Louisville's going to be so hard to guard, I think Richmond's looks this year will be just higher quality than the ones he got at Seton Hall. So I would not be surprised to see him up closer to like 30, 34%. What else did I want to ask you about, Kevin? I guess, man, best case scenario. Is this the best team in the Big East if everything comes together?
Oh man, that's tough. I've been working on my Big East preseason power rankings, and by default, and not even by default, but UConn's earned the spot that they could throw out 12 walk-ons, and I still think you have to rank them one just because they've won back-to-back national championships. I might not be as high on them this year as some others are, but I do think they're going to be very good. I think Xavier, if they stay healthy, which has been a problem for them over the past 2 seasons, I think they're going to contend at the top of the Big East. I think St. John's is in there as well. I don't think you could discount Creighton and Marquette either. So, yeah, I think the Big East could be really fun this year. Best case scenario, is St. John's the best team in the Big East? I would say no, but I certainly think if everything breaks their way, they could contend for a top 3 seed in the Big East tournament.
In your opinion, is the floor of this season the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I do. I would be very surprised if this team is not an NCAA tournament team, barring that there's no catastrophic injuries and they're not hampered by guys having to sit out. I would be very surprised if this team does not make the NCAA tournament.
So shooting is the obvious potential weakness, potential hole in this team, right? And I say the number 2 thing would be a misfit of pieces between Smith and Richmond, which, like I said, I have total faith in them that's going to work. But is there anything else that is a concern in any way? Obviously, like assuming health and everything, like what could be difficult for this group?
You know, I think it's size. I think it's rebounding. Now they do have good rebounders, and Rick Pitino, that was another thing that he tried to focus on last year, is guards have to rebound. Like you just can't, like the team last year, he said they were all offensive players. So they were just leaving Joel Soriano down there to rebound, and everyone else was running back on offense trying to get their shot. I think Kadari Richmond is a very willing rebounder. So you think about their size defensively, as I mentioned, with Zuby Ejiofor being 6'9", 6'10" but he does play bigger than that. Obviously, Vince Achukwu at 7'1". Those are going to be the 2 guys commanding the minutes at center. But I would say size and rebounding, and they're going to need their guards to help out and chip in and rebound.
Any last questions, Nick?
Nope.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. You know, Pitino is Pitino. I hope he's dripped out in the white, in the all white suit again. I think it's good for the Big East that, you know, the top of this league is so stacked and that St. John's and Pitino are part of it. One last thing I want to mention. Remember last year, I think this was maybe right before the winning streak at the end of the season, when he's like, my team is so slow and unathletic. And like, part of him, I think, was definitely joking, but the other part of him was like, in a way, like you said, like they had to scrap together a roster. Like they recruited offensive talent. And like, as Nick said, like you're getting good players with their Ivy League guys. Like in terms of athleticism, like Richmond, Smith, and Scott, just at the tip of the iceberg, like this team is athletic, and that is what Pitino wants. So I think that's really encouraging.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, remember, he was a professional coach too. He knows how to send his message through the media and in press conferences. So no, I think, I mean, it's water under the bridge now. The season's gone. There's a whole bunch of new players in there, but he was very serious when he said that. Nothing he does is by mistake. He does everything on purpose and for a reason. So, yeah, that was very serious, and it came after they blew a big second half lead at home against Seton Hall, which at the time people thought was the end of their NCAA tournament dreams, and it might have been, because obviously they didn't get there in the end.
Actually, that was for sure calculated.
Oh yeah.
I
thought of one more thing. I think this was Fanta in his sit down with Pitino. Pitino was talking about like his group chat with the players, and now he's talking to them every day. Any stories about just how the chemistry has come together, or his relationship with Smith or Richmond, and just how the new pieces are forming from a chemistry perspective?
Yeah, so we don't have any stories yet on his text messages to those players after practice. I know he does send out messages about practice because they keep a ton of stats, and he sends them out in a group chat to the entire team on saying who performed well, who shot well, who hustled well, and all that stuff. But no, everything we've gathered so far, the relationship is fine. It's going to be fine. I mean, he's been through it all. He knows what works and what doesn't work. So I wouldn't have any concerns about players meshing well or coming together, or there being any friction between them of who gets the ball more, who's getting more of the shots. I think this team is coming together, and to be honest, everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to get to the NCAA tournament. There's not a lot of players on this St. John's roster that have played in the NCAA tournament, so I think they're looking to change that this season.
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. Lot to like about. I hope to make it up to a game this year for St. John. So thank you so much for joining us, Kevin. You were awesome, and Big East. It's gonna be a lot of fun this year.
It's going to be fun. Thanks for having me, guys.